Hello and welcome back to another out of spec detailing video. We've got an exciting one for you here today. We have two Kia EV9s and we're going to be doing a full build quality analysis with both of these. The cool thing about this is we have a top trim GT-Line EV9 over here. This is actually a press vehicle. And then over here, we have a base rear wheel drive with a big battery pack, but a customer delivered one. We're gonna be comparing the two, looking through the fit and finish on the exterior, seeing how body panels line up. We're gonna jump inside, compare both trims, see how all the materials and fit and finish feels inside. And lastly, we'll be diving a little bit deeper into the paint of the customer delivered one, seeing what kind of defects comes from the factory and maybe even the dealership. So welcome back. Let's jump into it. I have Max from the Out of Spec Guide channel with me here today because he's done some full rundowns on all the trim differences between basically everything that comes with EV9. So Max, before we get into build quality analysis, why don't you run us through the pricing on these two cars we have here?
Yeah, so the EV9 has a pretty wide spread in terms of features and also, as you'd expect, price. So you can see, just even without knowing anything off the bat here, right, this GT line looks a lot nicer than that base model, which is a light long range. So EV9 starts with the base Light, which is a rear wheel drive vehicle with that standard battery pack we've seen in the Ioniq 5, Genesis GV60, Kia EV6. 78-ish kilowatt hours. This one that we have, the customer delivered version that we have on loan from Fort Collins Kia, is a light long range. So it steps up in having a much larger battery, just under 100 kilowatt hours, more range. It's actually the most range you can get in an EV9 for about a $5,000 price increase. So it's still rear wheel drive. This is the range spec though. I think it's like rated for 330 miles, I want to say, Coleton. I don't know if you have that number off the top of your head. We can put it in the video. But if you want the most range, theoretically for road tripping, this might be the best. However, for you nerds out there with EV road tripping, you watch out of spec motoring, something to note is that the large battery in this one actually charges a little bit slower than the standard battery if you get the absolute base Light. From then on, it's all-wheel drive, all big battery. So you step up from light long range, which is 61 grand, to the Wind, which is about 65 grand. That gets you a few more premium features, nicer wheels, the load bars, standard all-wheel drive, of course. I think that's actually, in my opinion, the sweet spot of the lineup. Gets you a lot of nice things. Land will give you, I think, the 360 camera, some nicer parking sensors, second row ventilated and heated seats, and a few other nice amenities. That's kind of the nice spec'd out one without any of the performance bits. I think it also has 20-inch wheels that are a nicer design. Then we step up to what we have here, which is the GT line. So we go in price from Land, which, by the way, up from Wind, right? Wind was somewhere, yeah, 65 grand. Then it's a big jump up. Land was 71 grand. Sorry, 69. This goes up to 73 grand. Sorry, it's a lot of numbers here.
It is. I'm impressed that you're rattling these off.
Yeah.
It's very confusing to look through the trims.
Every increment is around $4,000 or $5,000. So just, some shortcuts here. Let's say you want to step up from absolute base, $56,000 Light, and you just want the cheapest all-wheel drive trim. That's Wind. That's about a 9 grand upgrade. But anyhow, here we are at the GT line, which starts at around 73.5 grand. So from where we started, 56 grand with the absolute base Light, we see like an almost 20 grand price delta, Coleton. That's pretty large. However, you get a lot for it. You get new wheel designs, updated kind of roof bar. I think this looks pretty sweet. Nicer paint option. So this one's also been optioned with the, I forget the blue.
Ocean blue.
Ocean blue. It's a pretty cool color. This is kind of the flagship like color you see on the press marketing materials, and I think that's a good choice. Two-tone, of course. You also get, this is standard on Land as well, by the way, but with Land and GT line, these nicer cube headlights with what they call the active Tiger Matrix digital grille, something like that. Some bunch of buzzwords. Basically, you get like a cool DRL pattern that just, ups the styling game a bit. GT line also comes standard with a performance upgrade, so it has, instead of 470-ish horsepower, like 516, a bit quicker 0 to 60, though, to be honest, Coleton, none of the EV9s are really like performance vehicles. They're not really going to compete with even a base dual motor R1S, let alone a quad motor one, or what else is in this class, like a Tesla Model X or a Mercedes EQS. I guess it's a little bit more like a Mercedes EQS, where like these are all nice, they're luxury, you can haul the dogs and kids, but none of them are really that quick.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for that rundown, Max. I think one of the big things that we're going to see today is I think a lot of people have some reservations, myself included, on paying north of 70 grand for a Kia. And to be perfectly honest with you, this is a car that I am very much in the market for my wife. We originally had a reservation down for an R1S. We kind of felt that it was getting a little bit too pricey. I think we had ours spec'd out at like 96 or 97 grand.
Yeah.
But then we saw this thing come on the market, and I've had a little bit of seat time in both the GT line and the base one back there, the one from Fort Collins Kia, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty damn impressed with these cars. So let's jump into the build quality. These are going to be a long video here, so we'll leave chapters. I understand they're long, but I think it's important to kind of run through these. I'm curious to see, a lot of people always ask, because we have quite a few press cars on the out of spec team here that will get in and out for a week or so. So this will be cool to not only compare top trim versus kind of base trim here, but compare a press car versus a customer delivered one, see if there's discrepancies there, and really dive deep into this. So Max, let's start here with the exterior fit and finish of the GT line. Well, we'll start off here with our press vehicle, of course, the GT line. And I gotta say right off the bat, the GT line looks so much more premium than our base customer delivered one back here from Fort Collins Kia. The big thing that I'm really anxious to see with these cars, you guys have seen me do a ton of build quality analysis on this particular channel. We've had the competitors like Mercedes in here, Rivian R1S, and even Tesla Model X. And I'm really curious to see, because I think a lot of people really struggle with the price point of especially the GT line, because in my personal opinion, if I'm going to purchase a Kia, I want to get the nicest one possible. But I think we're going to see there's a lot of really nice features in even the base trim, and although it may not look as nice, there's quite a few things that I may actually prefer over that. One of the things right off the bat, as a professional detailer, gloss black is an absolute nightmare to keep clean. If you opt for the top trim, we have a ton of gloss black. So basically everything here down the side, all along the side skirt, back here as well, the whole rear bumper is gloss black. No matter what color option you get, if you want a white one, it comes with all of this gloss black trim. In my personal opinion, I think that can be kind of a negative, because even in my instance, I really don't want to deal with a car that has so much piano black trim on it that I'm constantly having to polish it out and, you know, get it dialed in all the time. So I do think that's a little bit of a negative, whereas basically the base trim back here, you see you have a lot more of that plastic cladding. Now I will say it doesn't look as nice, so there are some trade-offs there. But let's jump into the actual fit and finish. Again, I want to emphasize this. This is a press car. A lot of the times these vehicles have been gone through. They really take them off the show or the assembly line and make sure that all the panels look awesome, so that when we do videos on them, we're not seeing panels that are completely misaligned and a mess. But it's really nice to have the two here. So Max, come on here to the hood and let's just start looking at this here. Fit and finish down this looks fantastic. I've also recently purchased one of these. Now this is a panel fitment tool. This is in millimeters here, so you can see as you basically put this into a panel, you can see exactly the measurement there. So if we see something that's really off, I can go in and actually measure it here to show you guys behind the camera exactly what it looks like, because sometimes in person it looks a little bit different than it does coming through your TV or phone screen. But very impressive fit and finish here. This is an area on R1S that I see a ton of issues with. I have Rivians in the shop all the time, and this being a powered frunk in something like the R1S here, these move all the time. So I'm glad to see already this is looking quite good. We have a little bit of a rubber seal going in between this really large headlight bezel here and the hood. This all looks really nice. Same as goes for down here once it comes to this front quarter panel. Max, I'm gonna flip over here on this side. This frunk will definitely open up when we talk a little bit more about the interior, but really nice shut lines here. Kia badge is really cool here. This feels like a metal piece. The only thing I would say, I really see a lot of people wanting to black these out to match the rest of the car. There's not a whole lot of silver on these, other than I guess the lower accents there, but it's quite a bright silver there. Now the front end design of this car is definitely striking, and this is one of my favorite things, of course, on the GT line, is this accent here. Max, tell me a little bit about this, because from what I understand, you have to subscribe to get different startup patterns and running light patterns on this. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it's very like, you know, people play video games and have purchased DLC or downloadable content. It's like that version of that for the car world. It's finally come. The BMW heated seats everyone was afraid of. Well, this, as I said in the spec and trim comparison, right? You get Land or GT line, you get these cool active grills, and you don't have to pay anything by default once you've got it to like get this DRL pattern. I think it's cool, but to get like a customizable startup and display, it's basically like, as you can see, a pixel grid. You can customize how you want it to look. You basically go on like a store in the vehicle and purchase those. So they're like digital assets.
That's a strange ask, I think, from Kia. In my personal opinion, you're paying north of 70 grand for this particular trim on this. You need to unlock everything. Let people do what they want with it. I really, really don't like that. But I do want to touch more a little bit on these pixels here. You cannot option this with a matte trim. And let me explain a little bit why. Max, if you actually come in here, maybe down in this particular area, this is actually paint, of course, and the pixels are coming through it. But the important thing here, this is a different plastic from this here. So this is just normal clear coat, whereas this is more like somewhat of an acrylic. It's very, very different. And then I want to show you one difference over here, because this without it is just the normal paint. You don't have any of that behind the glass thing. So one thing that does a little bit concern me here, of course, this is on the front end of the vehicle. What is this going to do with rock chips? Because if you get a rock chip on something like paint up here, very easy to just touch it up with a colored paint, but this is going to be very different, and I'm curious to see how this is going to wear over time. I think that'll be something interesting we see as these cars age a little bit, but I don't think anybody has pointed that out. But when I looked at this first time, you can clearly see a huge difference there, how it goes from black, and then you can see that the paint is actually underneath that layer. So I think that's a really interesting fact there. We do have a front camera up here, which is absolutely awesome, and just tons and tons of gloss black up here, which I really, really don't love. But I gotta say, so far, everything up here looks really nicely put together. And in all honesty, this car feels extremely premium. So Max, let's come over to this side. One thing I'm already gonna point out here, this looks way thicker on this side if we compare it to the other side there. So quite a bigger gap in this particular area. We can actually take some measurements here. So let's grab our tool out. Even over 5 millimeters here. So it's right at about 5. Let's jump back over here. And you can see it is substantially different here.
Wow.
So a lot tighter on this side. So I would say, okay, a little bit of discrepancy there. Even on a press car, we'll of course compare it with our customer delivered one. Quarter panels here, very, very small. I've already noticed that the color, especially on this blue one, the front bumper is a noticeably lighter shade than the actual quarter panel. This is something super common in the automotive industry. Front bumpers, of course, are plastic, whereas these are traditionally metal. They get prepped a little bit different, and I see everybody comment about this. Realistically, not all manufacturers have this huge mismatch in paint. Porsche being one of them, pretty much all of their cars, whether it's a plastic bumper, a carbon fiber hood, a metal door, whatever it may be, they are identical. So they spend a lot of time doing that, but of course you're paying a lot of money for that. So I would say the only knock I've seen up here so far, pretty big panel gap on the driver's side compared. Moving down here to the doors, nice gapping all the way down here. A lot of times on Rivian, what I've been seeing is basically this lower seal here sticks out a little bit. Definitely see a little bit of discrepancy there. As you notice, this panel is sticking ever so slightly farther out there. So I would like to see that tightened up a little bit. And you can see definitely a little play. Is that the end of the world? No, absolutely not. Just think it's important to point these things out, and maybe when you go to take delivery of a car, you may look at some areas like that and want it a little bit tighter. Moving down here, A-pillars in here, pretty decent plastic on here, and I did notice on the black one over there, rotary trails for days. We'll show you all of that later on in the video, but moving along here, B-pillars are always a nightmare for manufacturers. The reason being, you have so many areas coming into one very tightly condensed area, and you see some discrepancies. Here you do also. This is super nitpicky, I understand that, but you can see that this one definitely not lining up there. This is not a perfect shut line here. So, yeah, not perfect at all. Moving down here to the door handles. Max, what do you think about these door handles? Because I gotta say, these to me seemed like one of the best implementations of pop-out door handles. They feel nice, they look very nice. One thing I will note, they do feel oddly low to me. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, we're both taller people, so but I also have long arms, so to me, honestly, they feel okay, but I see what you mean. For this being such a tall vehicle, it almost feels like I don't want to stereotype too much, but for like, it's like designed for a 5'3" driver.
Yep.
I don't know, like it does feel like, you know, I don't know, shorter person who wants a larger car maybe will be well accommodated here.
Yeah.
I don't find it too uncomfortable. One thing I think is really nice is like this door handle in general ergonomically feels appropriately chunky for both the size of the door, the size of the vehicle. It's just nice to hold.
Yeah, and feels 10 times more premium than any of the EQ line of Mercedes. I have bitched about those. They are just my least favorite ones ever. You grab them, they feel super cheap. This just feels fantastic. And the cool thing here is when you actually lock the vehicle, they of course go in. Aero efficiency, I think they're fantastic there. Moving down here between the doors. So we've got a nice rubber seal in here for noise insulation. I gotta tell you, this is one of the quietest SUVs I've driven. Kind of up there with even Mercedes EQE, EQS stuff. Very, very impressive noise isolation, especially compared to something like an R1S and especially compared to a Model X. But down here, I wanna notice how big this gapping gets over here. You can see really tight lines here, looks perfect, and then bam, huge gap there. I would like to see that kind of shrunk up a little bit, especially Max when you compare it to the front one there. Definitely looks a little bigger. If we want to take some measurements here, we definitely can. So that's about 5.5 millimeters there. And almost 6. So maybe not a huge difference, but I will show you on the other side a bigger difference. Moving back here to the rear doors. This all looks really, really nice, except for, again, you can tell this is substantially bigger than up here. Now, I want to always make this comment when we do these videos. Everybody says, who cares about, you know, panels aligning perfectly? In my personal opinion, if you're paying 70 grand for a car, even if you're paying 40 grand and you buy something like a Tesla Model 3, you don't want to look down the side of your car in the rear view mirror and see doors sticking out like this and trim not aligned. It just looks like crap, and you don't really feel that nice about your vehicle when you're getting in it, when you're making those huge monthly payments on it, especially now with interest rates. It's just one of those things. I think manufacturers really need to work on that kind of customer experience and take feedback. Rivian has been one of the best in taking feedback. We've made so many videos kind of bashing their earlier cars where like every single panel was out of alignment. They fix it for customers and they've made massive improvements, and you see a lot of people being very, very satisfied because they're getting a well-built car. And for those who say nobody cares, there's a ton of people who care, trust me. All of this black plastic trim on here is extremely nice on the GT line. It's going to be a pain in the butt to polish, but yes, it's one of those kind of trade-offs. It definitely looks better, but it's going to be harder to maintain. Polishing all these, they're soft plastic. They're going to scratch like crazy. Just me as a detailer, I'm noticing how they've done this rubber trim here. This is going to be a pain in the butt to polish all of these areas. So I'm just going to be cursing these while I'm sitting there with my 1-inch polisher, just getting all of these dialed in, but that's a particularly nitpicky thing. Moving back here, Max, we have some very large distinctive taillights. These at night look absolutely phenomenal in my personal opinion. It very much looks different from the Kia Telluride, to which this is very similarly based on, I would say, but man, oh man, are they really nice and bright and very distinctive that you're driving something very modern and very Kia. Their new design language is really interesting.
It's a good parallel to the front where it's you get this cool like lightning bolt angle almost. And like you said, Coleton, it's different. It feels like every EV, SUV or not, has to have like a rear light bar. And as much as I love those, we've seen it done. Like they're doing something really unique here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, my personal opinion, they knocked it out of the park with the styling of this. I think that like the trim to get on this is GT-Line. You get a white one, you get that Stormtrooper vibe with the funky looking wheels. Like, this is a truly sweet looking vehicle just rolling down the road. We were in Fort Collins yesterday and we're just driving through Old Town and we saw a EV9 in one of the silvery colors, and my wife just looks out and goes, oh my God, you got to buy me one of those. I freaking love this thing. So they definitely draw attention even to non-car people, because like I'll be pointing out a Ferrari or Lamborghini and my wife's like, huh, what? I don't really care. But she sees an EV9 and is like, wow, that's a beautiful car. So I think it's really cool to see that. The back end styling here is pretty awesome, but I love how these taillights just form into the body here and just the design language they've done. Now the bumpers here, amazingly tight gaps here. This is what I really, really like to see. This is an area that a lot of manufacturers struggle with. And you can see this is very complex here with how they have the fender here, or I guess the plastic fender. Then you have the rear quarter panel. Then you have the bumper. Then you've got another rear bumper here. It's very, very complicated in my opinion, and they've kind of knocked it out of the park with getting these aligned. Moving back here, Max, let's just open this and see how the trunk opens. It's always a little funky to find this. Nice, smooth, quiet operation there. I think it's interesting that Kia does this. I always see this being different on other manufacturers. Sometimes these are glossy. This is matte inside. I'm not sure why some choose to do that and don't choose to do that. It seems a little odd to me, maybe. One thing I will say with these kind of bumperlets, maybe you can see how it sticks out here a little bit. If you have dogs getting in and out of the back of this, especially with this super soft gloss piano black there, I think that's just going to get absolutely shredded apart. I can just see my boy Charlie putting his paw here and I'm just like, no!
You know what I think they're going to sell a lot of for this? You know how some people get those like, you know, rubber trunk liners and things? Those cargo, whatever mats, whatever you want to call them, they're going to be super popular.
To say the least, absolutely. And having this whole bumper gloss black to me is just like, okay, I get it. It looks nicer, but yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people are going to hate this, in my personal opinion. It just seems like kind of one of those things. Like Rivian R1S looks like a very premium vehicle and has all plastic cladding down there. Great mechanism there. That feels very premium, of course, open and close. I like the lack here, Max, of not having like a button here in the back. You have no cameras back here, which is quite interesting. This, I would say, is very hard to find. It's this just little sliver here where you actually open up the rear trunk. We do have our backup camera right here. I don't see any sprayers on that, so in Colorado, that's immediately going to get dirty as you drive down the road. And here we, of course, have the rear view camera. Again, no sprayer. So it's nice that they do those opposite, but in this basically SUV or hatchback style vehicle, you always here in Colorado, this is completely covered. You have to put sprayers on these. I think that's an absolute given. Max, every time we're driving up in the mountains or even here down in like the foothills areas, you're constantly in the wintertime getting out of your car, just quickly wiping them.
Oh yeah.
I think that's one of those things should be improved. Let's move around here to the charge port. Now charge port here, my opinion, wrong location. This needs to be on the other side. Of course, with this coming into Tesla's supercharger network, going into NACS very, very soon. I don't know all the logistics with Kia doing that, but having this on the opposite side, we're going to see a lot of interesting things happening at superchargers because you're going to have to basically block two stalls here. Now, we did go to the Magic Dock down in, what is that, North Glen area with the black EV9. We actually couldn't get it to charge, so some inoperability issues with that going. But yeah, I think that'll be cool. Charge port here, if it'll open. Hello. Max, what's going on here?
I'm not sure. We have the key nearby. The vehicle's unlocked.
That's the wrong Kia key. What the heck?
Is the vehicle started, maybe?
No, screens are completely off. Well, let me try and pop over here.
From the, yeah, do it from the driver button.
Okay.
Oh, that worked.
Okay, that's a little weird.
These are the problems with power charge ports. So we just had to troubleshoot that, and you can say whatever you want about how well the mechanism works, when it works, but at the end of the day, it is a digital signal and an actuator that has to happen versus like on my Polestar, my favorite thing, Coleton, aside from them putting the port almost in the same place where Tesla does, is that I just press in, it always pops out. It's a dumb, simple mechanism. This one's not like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's one of those things. I've talked about this in length on every single car that has a power charge port. I don't understand why just because now it's an EV, we need to have funky door handles and funky, basically gas doors that are turned into EV ports. To me, it just doesn't make sense. One of the things I love that they did here, we have nice lighting in here. This is a really good implementation covering your CCS port here, how this closes. Way better than my ID4 where you have this literally maybe 1 cent little rubber strap. The thing's hanging down here, blowing in the wind. Absolutely hate it. I cut it off immediately and just like, lose this thing all the time. But this is a great implementation here. Now closing it, I'm curious to see if it'll actually close this here.
Ooh, not the smoothest motion.
No, definitely not. So let's see if we can now open this. There we go. So now we're working again. Yeah, I guess it pretty much closed that, but I think that's really, really cool there. This, Max, I believe shows your state of charge level indication here, correct?
Yep. So as you can see, 4 of those LEDs, so 25, 50, 75 increments.
Cool.
Really nice. Also, you can use the vehicle to load funky adapter here, which I don't understand why, like, Kia and Hyundai think that's an ergonomic location. The cool thing about this, we'll get to this in the interior, they actually put one right in the rear in the trunk. So you've got another one, but you could, if you want, get another outlet with this.
Okay, very cool. Well, I think that's enough on the charge port here. A little bit, it kind of like goes in. It's nowhere near as bad as like Lyric, and I think it was Blazer EV out at the LA Auto Show. We were playing with the charge port, and it's like, this is the perfect reason you don't need a powered charge port. Enough on that though. I don't really see anything back here that I'm concerned build quality wise. I think all the shut lines look absolutely perfect. If I do have to make one complaint though, this does seem a little rather thick to me up here, and it's interesting that they haven't put a rubber seal all the way down here. As a detailer, this is something I particularly notice, because if you don't put a rubber seal here, all the water and crap that comes off the roof goes right in here, and then it just makes all of your door jambs completely and absolutely filthy in the back end there. But nonetheless, Max, I want you to notice here, just moving down here, look how much tighter this is over here. You can tell that it's basically almost, you can see a little discrepancy there, but this shut line is nearly perfect. So very different from over there where you had quite a bit larger gap there, but still this is all looking pretty good, nice and flush in this area. But definitely noticing side to side, there are a little bit of differences that I'm noticing here. One thing I do want to talk about though, doors. Holy hefty. I cannot believe how heavy these feel. Honestly, kind of reminds me of Cybertruck a little bit about how thick these are. Now,
And
we're
really
not
nicely dampened.
very nicely dapped. Yeah. And like that is a nice thud in there, 0 rattles in there. Feels really, really nice. And I think that's one of those things. Most people are like, why are you opening and closing a door? Every time you're getting in and out of the car, my Tesla Model 3 back here, for example, if you have the window down and close it, the whole window just shakes, and it's like, that does not
Part of that might be the frameless door design
Exactly.
too, but like this, of traditional door designs, this is like one of the nicest I've seen. I wish we had a Telluride or something to compare this to, because I don't know if like prior Kia vehicles have been this well put together. I feel like not.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been around the Kia brand too much. Again, it's like, I think the hard part with me is just the name. And Marquez did a great video over on the Autofocus channel. He's like, if you just took the Kia badges off this, I think a lot more people would be interested in this. I think Kia's at kind of this inflection point where they're kind of going in two different ways. I personally think they're making cars that are way more premium feeling, and they're kind of going to start to go like this. And as far as, you know, we're talking about this compared to Tesla, Rivian, Mercedes. Like, this is very impressive what they're doing. So I'm hoping that we can kind of get over that, hey, it's just a Kia type thing. But I do think that initial shock factor of, man, this is a $70,000+ rig from Kia. That's a lot to deal with. Anyways, moving down the side here, I'm seeing a little bit more discrepancies, especially with this lower panel here. So Max, I'm gonna get out the gauge here. We're gonna take a measurement here. That is nearly 7.5 millimeters there. And then up here, we are about 4.5. So 3 millimeters difference from there to there. It's nearly double in that particular area. So I think that needs to be tightened up a bit. I also feel like this shut line here on this door, way tighter on this side versus over there. So a little bit of things, and this is why I always say, okay, press cars come in, they should be perfectly gone through. You can see very visibly right there, that is not completely and absolutely perfect. This is something very similar to what I see on Rivians all the time. I did like 18 or 19 Rivians through the shop. Every single one has a different layout of whether they're pushed more to the front or more to the back. And you see these massive gaps to where you can almost get a pinky finger through them. So I think that needs to be tightened up a little bit. But I gotta say, overall with this, minus the Kia badge, this feels very, very premium to me. So I think now that we've looked over the press car, let's jump over to our customer delivered one. Again, this is one that was given to us by Fort Collins Kia for a long-term loan on the Out of Spec Reviews channel, to where we can make content, we can pile on the miles with it, and really dive into this. So we're gonna spend a little bit less time on this particular one, unless I see something that's like glaringly kind of out there on like build quality, fit and finish stuff here. Of course, immediately you notice this trim on here definitely looks a lot cheaper, especially when it's not, you know, professionally coated or something like that. It definitely looks dull, makes the car look way less premium. I'm just looking over there to the EV9 GT-Line and I'm like, man, that is just a striking looking rig. Same stuff going on here though. This all looks really good in here. Again, notice how tight that shut line there is. Let's look back here, huge gap back here. So I think that should be definitely kind of fixed with Kia. To me, it seems like this can come back. You can see it's missed that door edge there. So I think a little bit of discrepancies there, but moving back around here, these shut lines, yeah, look really good all in here. I don't see much of anything up here that looks bad as far as panel gap alignment. So this does, I guess, look how they're designing it. But again, I'd like to see a rubber seal in here. I think that'd really help with dirt and things like that. This being aluminum on here seems a little odd to me, maybe, Max. It just kind of, when you see this car, like, I guess, full side profile, that line not being black just kind of really stands out, especially on a black vehicle here. But I don't know, that may be just my personal opinion. Back here, much more simplistic design, and I much prefer having this textured black plastic back here. Dogs can still scratch this area up, but I think it's gonna look better potentially over time, and not, you know, let's just say you're in here, you've got your door open, so you can never find that there. It's a little odd.
Does this have a kick sensor? I don't believe it does.
I'm not sure, to be honest. Kyle and Alyssa have had the dogs back here, so definitely tons of dog hair. A really nice vehicle on the inside to put 3 dogs in and, you know, have kids and whatever you need in here. But this area, you know, if you're trying to reach back here, you're not going to be scratching up this quite as much. So I do much prefer this, but again, it doesn't look quite as nice. Same thing going on here with a matte paint in here, which is just weird. And I can see it kind of getting glossy over here. So that's a little strange. I don't know. That's just one of those weird things that I notice as a detailer. See how this one closes? So smooth. They nailed it on that. Really, really like that. Moving down the side here, honestly, guys, I'm not seeing much. This thing to me just feels like they're really put together. I'm being ultra picky like seeing just small discrepancies in these panel gaps, maybe side to side here, but I'm very, very impressed with how they put these cars together. If anything, I would actually say the customer delivered one seems like a little bit more well put together than the other one, because I'm noticing like on the driver's side here, this is all perfect down here, whereas the press vehicle wasn't quite as much. So yeah, interesting stuff going on there. Max, what's your overall, I mean, you edit all of these videos. I just want to get a second perspective of eyes. How do you feel like the build quality, especially considering the exterior, is on both of these EV9s?
I think the build quality seems solid. I mean, you know, we've compared this to a lot. Like you said, the Kia badge is notable on this vehicle, especially considering that GT line over there getting up to $75,000 with options. I know people will say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money for a Kia. And yet, as we've seen, this vehicle has a lot of complex, nice styling going on. You can see on out-of-spec reviews that has a lot of nice performance characteristics. It's pretty efficient. It's competing in pretty, I think, high class territory with all the other stuff. I think the really big exception here that I'm noticing, or the big thing that I feel like is a trend, is you've, Coleton, have looked at a lot of startup vehicles. You mentioned how Rivian has had their build quality issues, and yet they've been really responsive with that, which is nice. Those aren't cheap vehicles. You've also looked at Lucid Airs, even more expensive vehicles, which have had some pretty glaring issues with, we'll get into paint later in this video, but paint as well as even some panel alignment.
Oh, panels are terrible.
What is a really expensive vehicle. So here's Kia, the advantage of, I guess, the like Korean manufacturing machine. They're used to mass producing things. I mean, Kia, Hyundai Motor Group, it's a massive company. They seem to really have dialed everything in compared to a lot of the startup brands. I mean, still Tesla, as I mentioned, Lucid, Rivian, they all have their issues. And this, as you showed, is not perfect, and yet I think is really quite good and what you would expect for the price. The reality is, I hate to say this, but $70,000 now for an SUV, that's not ultra luxury territory. That's just premium territory. And I think this is totally acceptable for that class.
Yeah, I mean, in my personal opinion, and you know, you can go watch different videos on R1S and Model X, even Plaid variant. You know, when those were 140 grand, this thing, as far as exterior fit and finish, definitely seems to me screwed together way better than even something. Rivian's getting there, but I think this is definitely a step above as far as exterior fit and finish so far. I think you'll see a lot more differences when you start comparing inside materials on, you know, R1S versus EV9, but this is way better put together than Model X. I mean, Dave on the Out of Spec Dave channel, he just got a Model X Plaid. We've been driving that car around. To me, it's hilarious with Tesla. It seems like the more you spend, the more creaks and rattles you get, which is just like, I just don't get why they do that. I guess maybe because they're producing so many less of them. But this to me feels, if you're going like, hey, Model X feels really premium to me, this, I think you're gonna be very surprised with how nice it feels. I would even say, Max, that this is like getting to the point of like EQS as far as exterior fit and finish. Feels really nice to me. So very impressed by what Kia's done here. And yeah, I think these are two compelling vehicles, you know, at the top of the line and even at the bottom of the line here. But I think interior, you're going to see some serious differences. Kia's done some really nice improvements with these cars, but I still think there's a little way to go to like jump into that premium sector. So let's jump over here to the GT line. Before we jump inside, it is very important to note here that Kia is letting us know with this bright orange light in the center of the dash here that our high voltage is charging our 12 volt. I don't know why you would ever need to know that, but okay, Kia thinks that's...
To be fair, Coleton, if you've seen the recent history of Kia's issues with EV6, you might know why they do that.
Okay, fair enough. I don't. So I just
There's been a lot of dead low voltage batteries.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, you know, Tesla's has the same thing, but I just think that's always funny. Kyle always points that out. So, man, just jumping in here. So this is top trim. Just initial thoughts. I'll give mine, and then I'm going to ask Max. Kia nailed this. It looks so nice. I love these seats that the GT line gets with the black inserts, the white outside, the GT line. Probably the best headrests. We'll talk a lot more about these that I have seen in any car. Max, your first initial thoughts, just looking at this, you're kind of seeing some materials, you're seeing ambient lighting, the material uses. What do you think?
I think it's pretty nice. I mean, we'll get into actually how the materials feel, what they're made of, but just visual impressions, I really like it. I'm not a material expert, or I don't really I haven't spent that much time in a lot of luxury premium vehicles. What I can say, just as a lay observer, is I love the way they've configured this space. They have a lot of space because this is a ground-up EV platform, and they really made the most of it here. You have this really nice storage area here, kind of comparable to what Rivian's doing with the R1 vehicles, but I think even more practical. The cup holder situation where you can reconfigure these, that floating kind of center console. It's just a really nicely laid out space. Maybe not the most beautiful in a minimalist way. Some people I think do like the way the Tesla Model X is just super bare. I don't really, but some people do. And this is a much more kind of complicated affair. And I'm with you, Coleton. I really like this mesh, AirPods Max, Apple Vision Pro,
Sure.
whatever material you've got on the seat headband. It's nice. I mean, and then this two-tone you get on the GT-Line seats. It's sharp.
Definitely sharp. And yeah, I got to be honest, I haven't been in a ton of Kias. We've had the EV6 GT, we've had some few other EGMP vehicles, of course, on test. And to me, this definitely feels like the most refined out of all of them, and definitely feels the most premium, and that should be because it's basically their top of the line vehicle. Now, there are some areas in here that I don't love, and we'll kind of go through those. But first off, just starting here on the seats. So Max, up here with the GT line, we have ventilated and heated seats here, correct?
Yeah, you actually get those as standard on the cheapest $56,000 Kia EV9. Standard for the front seats, heat and ventilation.
Okay, very interesting. The weirdest thing about these that I'm feeling initially, they are definitely not using leather here. This is a synthetic. I have not delved into this. I'm not sure if this is considered vegan leather. They're considering this leatherette. It doesn't feel plush to me. It almost feels plasticky. Max, have just a feel on this, especially in bolsters. It's definitely not as soft as even Tesla Model 3, Model Y seats, and definitely feels completely different than something like R1S. I'm anxious to see over time how this wears. And from what I understand, this is a different material from the GT line to the Light big battery that we have over there. Seats feel really, really nice. They're comfortable. I just wish that they were a little bit less plasticky. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at here, but they look aesthetically amazing. And there's quite a few different color options you can get in here. I think you can get blue seats. You can also get kind of a tan brown, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, with a quilted pattern. I think those honestly are my favorite of the line. The seat situation in this car between front and back is really complicated because I guess it's it's an important part of the car, obviously. I mean, packaging is everything here, but oh my gosh, the just amount of seating variations. I wish I could encyclopedically know all that for everyone.
Yeah.
If you're interested in a particular trim or something at the dealer, take a good look at those seats because they're all very different.
All very different, and the configuration front seats compared to rear seats, and having a 7-seater versus a 6-seater. So just for example, you can't get a 7-seat configuration on the GT line, which seems a little weird. So you only get the captain seats. We'll talk more about that. But just some I think weird how they went ahead and did that in the lineup. It seems very convoluted, whereas Tesla, you just go in, or even Rivian. So Rivian R1S, you pick your exterior color, you pick your wheels, and you pick white, green, black interior. That's all. There's no difference there. So I would say coming at it, it may seem more like a traditional vehicle as opposed to these EV startups that are very minimal on the differences. But I kind of prefer Max in the way that Rivian would do it. It's just you get all the features and you just pick your color in between. I personally think that's the best way to do it. And you kind of feel like you're getting nickel and dimed in a little bit of a way.
Yeah.
For example, the driver's seat here has massage seat, but the passenger doesn't. Why is that a thing? I don't know. Seems weird. But let's, Max, jump into materials other than the seats. This is just the greatest thing ever. I mean, so we basically have memory foam in here, and you put your head on this and you kind of just feel like you're in the back of an S-Class Mercedes. Like they have the little pillows back here. It is so comfortable and just, I don't know. I love it. The seats are so unbelievably comfortable. Yeah, really impressed with that. Let's start off here with center console. So same very plasticky feeling leatherette material, I think we're going to call this. We have a little bit down here. I like the accent of having some different cloth accents down here. I think this is nice, especially you know, where your seatbelt goes. Tesla is one of those companies that doesn't understand if you put the two same materials together, they squeak. So if you have something like this cloth here, you're not going to get your side bolster squeaking here. I think that is a very, very smart choice. Also love the accented lighting here. Just feels really nice and very much thought out. Max, in here is a little odd. You have literally no space back here. And this little plastic piece feels very Kia to me. Yeah. Feels very cheap. I mean, this is like yeah, that's not a nice feeling.
We'll get into why that is when we get into the second row and how they package it, but it is weird because in every other car, you know, you lift that up, you usually have at least a somewhat deep space to fit things into. Here, at least you get a nice phone charger. I do wish they gave you, especially with this being a 6, potentially 7-seat vehicle, 2 wireless phone chargers, the way like the Rivian and the Tesla Model X give you.
Sure.
But it's at least nicely situated. It's rubber. It's very grippy. Yeah. What do you think, Coleton? I'm curious of this situation, the little mini tonneau cover thing for the cup holders and the way they package that.
So I've been in a few of these EV9s now. This particular one feels very different. I kind of have felt where they're kind of grabby before. This feels fine. It's of course plastic here, but this actuation, it actually feels very nicely dampened. Yeah. Now, one thing you are absolutely going to notice, I think Kia has listened to every single video I've watched and complained about gloss piano black buttons and have given us dark Nardo gray-esque buttons here. Ooh. So we are really moving in a good direction here. I think that's a cool accent. It actually really matches nicely. And like you can see here on the steering wheel, you're not getting this huge gloss piano black stuff. Now I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this stuff is still going to scratch. You're still going to see it exactly like piano black because it's a soft plastic material. It's still dark. But I think that's kind of a cool accent, and it's not just super, you know, gloss piano black fingerprints everywhere. It definitely hides fingerprints a lot more. Now, the first thing getting into here, I would say, is maybe a little overwhelming is just this steering wheel. Max, if you kind of pull back here, maybe right in front of my eyes or somewhere around there, there are so many things going on here. And coming from something like a Model 3 or a Model Y or even a Model X, you're like, holy crap, there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. So you have the weirdest thing about this car is like the driver assistance system. So you can have it steer you, but you're controlling the throttle and brakes, which I think is, I know Kyle was like, well, yeah, that's a Kia Hyundai thing, but I have never driven a ton of those with the driver assistance. And I was like, this is a very weird sensation. But then you have your cruise control separate. You have your adaptive cruise separate. You have your lane change separate. When you're driving this thing, there is so much stuff flashing up here that it's like, okay, I need to like really take a minute to figure that out.
Coleton, do you want to actually start it up so we can see those screens?
Sure.
Up, what it looks like?
Let's do that. And let's talk about this while we're at it. So EVs having a start button. Max, I don't know about you. I'm not a fan of that. I just put your foot on the brake, the car should be on, boom, into drive. I don't know if we can even see all of this stuff, Max.
In defense of the start button, while we're doing that, I will say some people like that because it makes it very clear when, for instance, you don't put your foot on the brake pedal, you're in accessory mode. Like people who are used to traditional cars, if you're not like a TikTok star who's buying your first, you know, Gen Z car or whatever, and aren't used to all this tech, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's how I grew up with cars. I'm with you. I like not having a start and stop button in my EV, but I see why they've done it. A lot of, let's say, Kia customers stepping up into this will probably want details like that. I also just like how chunky and just ergonomically located this gear selector is, as opposed to every brand seeming to kind of like door handles, wanting to reinvent the wheel and do some weird thing here, or even do what Tesla does and try to put it on a touchscreen.
Yeah, and one thing I am happy about this, when I initially saw this, I was like, oh, this is going to be a huge knee interference area here. You sit low enough in the EV9, and this is really not out of your reach here. This feels, I would say, a little plasticky to me, and we do have gloss black buttons here, which to me, this is looking like the only piano black button in the entire car, which is a little strange. But yeah, it feels fine. I think it's, you kind of get used to it. When you have the steering wheel out, you don't really see it right away. So you're kind of looking around here like, okay, how do I turn this car on? But yeah, some really cool stuff here.
You know what I find overwhelming?
Yeah.
You mentioned the steering wheel, and as you start this up again, I find everything to do with climate on this car so intimidating, because you've got, as we can see now, this digital screen to control a few settings, and then you've got a full climate menu on this screen, and then you still have physical buttons here. Don't get me wrong. I like having the physical buttons, but it is so much going on with the duplication of controls that are either software or hardware, and it's like overload for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Like, screens here are very nicely laid out. I gotta say, huge improvements to Kia on what they've done software-based in this car. I have complained and complained about their old software. I thought it looked very cheap. This feels a lot better here. We've got some interesting plastic material here with haptic buttons. I gotta say, driving down the road, you're, you know, kind of bouncing and hitting these. It seems a little weird, and then you kind of naturally lay your hand on here, and now you're starting to press buttons. This little screen here, if I'm sitting, I would sit a little bit closer in my driver position. I can see only half of this. The steering wheel is covering all of that. So a little oddness there, but I do think how the screens are laid out, the information it displays is really nice. You know, buttons here I think are fine. I'm not super into those. We, of course, here you can actually move your climate controls, you know, manually instead of in the screen. I think a lot of people are starting to go back to preferring this over like Tesla, where you're, you know, shooting them everywhere on the screen. I think that's nice. Max, I got to tell you, this is my favorite button in the whole car, is your volume button. So it's on or off here. And this scroll on that is absolutely perfect. It's a knurled finish on there. Isn't that amazing? Like,
it feels so nice. I wish like every car had that for its like drive mode selector or anything.
It's fantastic. And like, this is an area where I'd say like this button feels 10 times better than the Lucid one, where the Lucid one, you feel like you're going to pop this thing out of there. Feels fantastic. These buttons down here are very oddly satisfying, how you can just boom, 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 boom. I really, really like the implementation here, and having physical buttons, I think for a lot of people that are nicely dampened, they feel nice, they're in an easily accessible spot. I think that's fantastic. Down here, lots of interesting stuff going on here. So you can either charge your phone, or if you click this button, you can now do data and charge your phone. And we have two Type-C ports here. I think Jordan said they were 25 watt max.
Yeah, so not quite enough to fast charge a laptop, but just perfectly designed for phones, even tablets. I just have to give Coleton Kia a huge shout out, because they have been so slow in their previous vehicles, EV6 included, of having USB-A. As a tech nerd, it bugged me, not just having it, you know, that's fine for people with those older cables, forcing you, if you wanted to use Apple CarPlay, because they didn't do it wirelessly, to have to plug in with one of those weird cables. If you buy a newer phone, it doesn't come with that anymore. Finally, they're just making everything USB-C. I think that's the way it should be. One other note here, I'm curious what you think, Coleton. It really feels premium to me, the way these ports are like backlit. So at night, when you press this, right, you can see that changes to orange. You can easily see where those are and plug in that cable without really thinking about it.
Yeah, my only complaint with this area, Max, is like, I'm big with cable management. So like, if you look at anywhere in the shop, I try to hide cables. So this, you just have a cable coming out here, and now it's just going across. Whereas like something in here, maybe even
the Rivian, right, has the like cable routing through there.
Like, it's so much better, but I can kind of forgive that because it does look nice. This is a fantastic area for all the Utah moms rolling around with their Stanleys. You can fit the largest cup in here. And the crazy thing with this is you can just kind of rotate these, and boom, now you press, oh, these don't do that. Like, Okay, so you just press these, boom, boom. Do feel a little plasticky. I'm curious to see how these mechanisms last over time, especially something like this that rotates. I see a ton of people, as a professional detailer, of course, spilling coffee in this area, and I think you're gonna have a lot of people maybe push these back, toss a coffee in here, that thing's definitely spilling. And I can just see this, you know, over time not working as intended because you have this, you know, sticky apple juice or orange juice or coffee or whatever in there. So I think, okay, yeah, that can be a little forgiven, but definitely wanted to make a note there. Steering wheel feels fantastic. This material should have been used on the seats. It is so much softer here, Max. It actually feels like the synthetic vegan leather like Rivian and Tesla uses that I really, really like. Buttons here, very nicely dampened, awesome clicky buttons. These are perfect how they're, I'm pressing everything of course here, but they feel very premium. A little strange here, you have your drive mode down here. I'm not sure that this is the greatest area for that. Maybe that should be in a menu over here. Seems a little strange, but man, I gotta say, really like the interior here so far. So I think we should talk about door panels because there's a lot of stuff going on over here that's very different. First off, that door pull, very, very nice. So we have heated steering wheel over here. We have massage here. We have heated, ventilated, and then your memory positions. That's a fantastic location for turning all of that on instead of having it maybe down the side like an Audi e-tron for your massage, or diving into menus to just change that. I'm sure you probably can there. We also here have basically a nice soft touch material here. Feels a little bit, okay, I thought this was actually soft touch up here. It is somewhat, but this is a little bit harder plastic. So feels somewhat similar here. I am noticing they're like slightly different colors. This seems a little darker, and then this is a little more light gray, but I really don't mind this at all. It's soft touch. It doesn't feel super plasticky. It feels very, very adequate. Again, I would say my personal opinion, the door panel is kind of the most boring part of the interior. I talk a lot about door panels because I'm constantly cleaning them. There's just not a ton going on. You have, it just seems like a huge door panel and, you know, no different use of materials. You do have like a different color here and some cloth down here, but I think like maybe some Alcantara or some suede, something like that could make it feel more premium. Talking Alcantara and suede, I've heard everybody say that this has an Alcantara headliner. 1000% it does not. It may look like it. This is carpet. I really don't like it at all. It does feel nice, but to me, it was like, it's one of those things where they tried to make the car feel very premium, but then they just put a cheap material in there. And to me, it just kind of seems like a little bit of a bait and switch thing. They didn't say in any press thing saying, oh, you have Alcantara in this or anything like that, and then you have this material. It just, I'm giving that impression of like, it should be nicer in this particular vehicle. I mean, even R1S is having this, Model X is having this, I believe EQS. So like, I think that could be a little bit nicer, but I do understand Alcantara is an expensive material. Up here, I was actually wrong. We do have more gloss piano black buttons up here. The nice thing, Max, with the sunroof in this, maybe compared to Model X and R1S, you can actually retract this. Feels fantastic there to have some air coming in. This feels very $25,000 car premium. That should be, in my personal opinion, should be movable. But you know, even like Rivian, you don't have a screen that goes over that can kind of close. Like our ID4, I would say our sunroof feels more premium than this, to where it's just one button, shade closes. This feels a little cheap and chintzy to me, in my opinion.
And it's weird because the second part of it for the back obviously does have a power operation, but this one doesn't. So it is a weird inconsistency. But like you were saying, Coleton, the fact that it's shadeable and can vent makes it actually pretty unique in the field of EVs. By the way, I know I didn't mention this in the trim comparison, you've got to get a wind or above Kia EV9 to get this. So any of the rear wheel drive spec EV9s will not have the sunroof, which I think is a shame because it's a really nice option.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think good observations there. These are a little odd up here, Max. You want to like, because everything else is buttons in here, you want to kind of smack this, and they're very light touch sensitive,
I don't like
there.
that.
So that's a little strange, I would say. So the nice thing though is the buttons all feel different. Obviously you have haptic touch here, you have physical buttons here, you have very nice scroll wheels and just up and down clicks, but then these just feel a little strange to me. Backup camera here seems very nice. It is clean right now. I just rinsed the car off. Nice if you have kids in the back and dogs in the back, or you're hauling stuff back there, that you can actually still use your rear view mirror. So overall in front, Max, I gotta say, it feels very nice. There's a few little things that I'd like to see improved.
You've just triggered the voice assistant.
Oh,
and
yes,
it's doing a great
crazy.
job of dictating everything you just said.
Furniture, yes. Exit. Okay, fair enough. I have to say though, like if you're comparing EV9 to R1S, you immediately jump into R1S, feel it's a more thought out, better material experience, but this is substantially bigger. We have to do on either out of spec reviews or out of spec guide, put the cars side by side. I'm telling you, it is monumentally different, the size difference inside between this and R1S.
They've packaged this really well. And I don't know dimensionally, I think it is a little bit bigger actually than R1S. R1S is not in this category of three-row vehicles that massive of a vehicle. Definitely, like we were talking about earlier, the design gives away a lot of presence in here. I just like the fact that you can tell this is a really well thought through EV because most of the elements are just really livable, really practical. I'm with you. I don't love the soft carpet material on the headliner.
Yep.
I just feel like, one day of Cheeto fingers or whatever, that will get disgusting. I don't know how you would go about cleaning that.
Sure. Yeah, headliners are always weird to clean, but I'm glad to see that, like, especially in the top trim, that they did put a black headliner in there. That's a lot of things, in these more premium, getting into luxury vehicles, that we put Alcantara on headliners. It's probably the nicest material, and then you get into Starlight and stuff and like Rolls-Royce. But to me, this is like the absolute bare minimum, cheapest way you could possibly do a black headliner, and I'm not sure I'm totally sold on it. It looks aesthetically fine, and then you touch it and it's like, oh, you guys didn't really spend for the nice stuff. But yeah, I gotta say, the car feels nice. I do think R1S feels nicer. I do maybe slightly feel like even Tesla Model X feels nicer as far as materials. Again, I think the leather here is a little plasticky in my personal opinion. But let's jump to the back because lots more to talk about back there. So first thing back here, the amount of space is unbelievable. So my seat is actually back in the essentially easy entry mode here. So let me just pop back here. I still have so much space, Max. I cannot sit behind myself in the R1S without having my knees like this.
Wow.
Model X, I was sitting in Dave's Plaid the other night with Kyle driving, and Kyle like sits relatively close to the wheel, and my knees are in the back of it. The headroom was horrible. I feel like I'm sitting in, the Falcon Wing, tiny little window there. So much headroom here, like incredibly impressive. The other thing that I want to make a note with on this compared to R1S, R1S has basically, like, when you're looking down the back of it, like I am now, the sides come up and basically taper. So this basically your headliner is very far down. When I get in and out of R1S, I kind of have to do this weird duck, especially in the front seat. You don't do that at all here. It seems like there's a ton more space floor to ceiling in EV9. And man, oh man, I am just blown away with the amount of space. The captain's chairs back here feel very nice. If you're having dogs, I think that's the biggest negative with the GT line, is that you can't get basically another seat here, because I think the dogs get a little freaked out. This is just a specific use case that, most dogs don't want to be right here. They want to be sitting on the top of a seat. That may just be my dogs, but yeah, very, very impressive space back here, I gotta say. I've got plenty of room to put my feet here. These actually recline and can move even backwards, and you have these little leg rests, I guess, that come towards the back of your shins. I know Jordan was saying in his review of the EV9 that it felt a little weird because then you really have to sprawl out. And it's funny, Max, here you can actually move this passenger seat. And Kyle was saying, if you're going to give me access to this, I'm just going to put Alyssa up into the, you know, front pedestal there. So I think that's pretty funny. But use of materials here. I love the back of the seat. So you have this nice white accent here. You have nice cloth here. And then you have a little plasticky, but actually kind of a little bit rubberized material here that I think feels fantastic. Really, really nice, basically seat back holders here. The one thing I will say, Max, is kids are going to put Cheerios back here, ketchup packets, Chick-fil-A sauce, whatever. It will probably find its way to fall out of here. And maybe if they get it in the wrong spot, boom, that's going to smack and explode that. So I could say this is, you know, feels nice, but practically I'm not sure how this is going to do with kids per se. Now, this is one of the oddest things I've seen in any car. I think this is like a lunch tray. You can throw some Lunchables on here or something like that.
Yep.
But this, okay, there we go. That's a little weird there. Okay, so
this, by the way, this like stow out option is Land or GT-Line only.
Okay, very good to know, because I know the other one doesn't have that. But why can't I open this bottom one? There we go. So you have tons of storage in here, which is, I mean, I personally would rather have this more storage in here. That's just my personal opinion, but it is nice that you have this tray that kind of slides out, put snacks on there. It just seems weirdly dampened here, Max, to where like you have to shove it and then you have to pull this back and then push that back. I don't know, that doesn't seem super thought out to me. Feels a little plasticky in my personal opinion, but interesting area there. Now, seats back here, ultra comfortable. Same thing I would say. The leather material does not feel necessarily super premium to me. It's too hard. It's maybe like the top material has like almost plastic in it, and I think it's that leatherette material they're using here. I also wish they would put the headrest from the front seats in this. These are okay,
yeah,
but yeah, definitely not as comfortable, but so much room back here, Max. It's truly awesome. Up here, we have some climate controls, which these feel fantastic, easy for, you know, adults or even kids to access this. They may be putting it on ultra high, but, you know, feels really, really nice. Oh, that's very satisfying there to turn on and off those. I like having physical vents in cars. I think it's way better than having, you know, a screen here and you move them up and down like new Model 3 or something like that. Really like this implementation. Again, no gloss piano black buttons. Thank you, Kia, for listening to that. You put plastic buttons in there, they feel completely fine. Now, I would say the nice thing with this car is I don't necessarily feel like, I always think this is funny in cars. It feels like you have first class up here, you have like premium economy, and then like you're sitting next to a toilet in the back seat. And I don't feel like that in this car. It feels very
balanced.
Yeah, throughout the car. It's so funny. It's like plastics and leather really nice up here, and then you have more plastics and less leather, and then it's like pure plastics in a lot of cars.
Not like you've got the first class economy,
yeah, exactly,
and then like Spirit Airlines seat. You actually have a nice level of evenness there. Also, like even like you were saying, even though it's not your cup of tea, the fact that they've thought to give the second row passenger storage that could otherwise have gone to just more center console space shows that they really thought about how this is going to be used for families, for people sitting in the back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very, honestly, it's funny. This is one of those cars that like when Kyle and I were, you know, we'd go out to dinner or something in the other EV9, I'm like, you drive, I want to sit in the back seat. This is such a nice back seat.
Yeah.
You really feel like you can lounge back here. You have so much room.
To be fair, these are the nicest back seats because we have the GT-Line with the captain's row 6 seat and the relaxation package. So not all seats being made equal. Quick summary here, right? You mentioned, Coleton, the option to have 7 seats. To get that bench style second row, you've got to get either the cheapest spec one, which is the Light Long Range, the Light Standard Range, or the, I want to say, I think it's the Wind.
It's so many
it's so
different
confusing. No. Maybe it's the Land. I don't know. I'll put it in the video. But it's like 2 options. Everything else is some variant of this kind of 6-row configuration. But yeah, these are the nicest possible ones with, by the way, power adjustment.
Yeah, power adjustment too. We can definitely show that. I want to note these are a little goofy to me. It's not premium there, Max. And it just like goes to the floor and then, yeah, I think your kids are literally going to sit there and do this the whole road trip. So I think that's, I don't know, that could get annoying. But backseat room back here. Now I think the seat is all the way back. Let me verify this. Let me see, seat controls. So it is, but I can definitely lounge. Oh my gosh. Yes, please. So now I can just fully lounge back here. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is like a freaking limousine, Max. I love the back seat in the EV9. It's so comfortable. Yeah, you can fit plenty of space back there. Now, I got to ask you, Max, you've been in a lot of cars. You've been in press cars. Do you think they accomplished what they were going after here? A premium 6-seat row SUV that you can put kids in, that you can, you know, go on road trips. Where do you think this sits? Because I gotta say, I think they did a really good job. My personal opinion, the interior needs to be slightly nicer to really compare with Rivian, Model X, and EQS.
Yeah, well, IMO, Coleton, compared to those, you know, this is the thing people will always say, oh, it's so expensive for a Kia. We have to keep in mind, this is the GT line, the nicest one you can get, 75 grand. That is still basically entry-level R1S money.
Yeah.
So for what gets you an entry-level R1S, which, you know, you said is simpler configured to be fair, you get the nicest possible spec here. And I think especially for people in the second row, you're gonna be really happy. I mean, you've got this sunroof situation, you've got the crazy reclining, you've got on wind and above heated and ventilated second row seats. It's just a lot of like feature content. That's always what Kia and Hyundai Motor Group have done well, and they're just extending that into the EV world here. I think the other nice thing about this being an EV is the way they packaged it. You know, who, regardless of whoever's here, kids, dogs, adults, they can be really comfortable because there's no drive shaft tunnel running through here.
Sure.
It feels like a really smartly packaged minivan, and yet, as we've seen on the outside, it looks a lot nicer than any minivan.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Max, one thing I do want you to do is pop out that basically shin rest on the seat.
Yeah.
I believe it's powered on the side there.
I think you're right. There's
Nope. Other things are happening.
There's a lot
There we
of
go.
controls in this vehicle. Yeah, and then I can, the cool thing, right, they have these
Oh,
buttons
yes.
here, so
Oh, yes.
get out of the way, front passenger, and I'm just gonna,
Oh, yes. Now you
Sure.
feel like you're in business class, do you not?
gosh, this is nice.
Yeah, that's a really nice feature. That
And then you've got the stupid armrest, but
yeah, but the armrest actually now goes to the perfect position to where you
Or-
can put it all the way down.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're chilling back here. This is like super nice. And I just have my wife drive all the time and I'd sit in that seat and just chill. It's so nice. Yeah. Really impressed. I think there are, like, to get into that very, very premium space, Max, I do think like Rivian's got a nicer interior. I do feel like Model X has a nicer material as far as fit and finish, but I gotta say, what those don't have is just the space that this has. And there's a lot of utilitarian things that they've done with this, like having cup holders right here instead of having them in an armrest here, having Type-C ports literally everywhere.
and in the third row, too.
Yeah, and in the third row, and having air vents all the way back here, which is something that Alyssa always worries about with the doggos. You know, hot summer day,
Yeah.
a lot of these cars really struggle to put air back there
No
for the
pet
dogs.
mode on this, though, which is like, I don't understand, why are Rivian and Tesla the only brands that do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. We also do here have shades on the windows, Max, if you want to pull those up.
Gosh, that door sound is so nice.
It's fantastic. And that's a heavy, huge door. But yeah, like that's a nice feature. I see you're kind of finagling with it there, Max. That's maybe not the most premium. I'm glad that has it, but like my 2005 Audi Allroad has that and rear heated seats and all that stuff. So these actually have the ventilated rear seats back here and heated, which is super, super nice.
Wind and
Really
above.
like that.
One thing, Coleton, I really don't like, and you know, it's not like this vehicle is short on space overall, but man, both front and back, these door cards are so like pointless to the point where it's just like, I don't even know why they have them. You're
Okay.
definitely, you're not only are you not fitting a Stanley in there, like you're fitting maybe a few pens. I don't understand what you could actually put in that space.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as chunky as I think it could be, especially given the size of these doors.
Okay, yeah, I think that's 100% fair. And I just, again, I want to point out these door panels. It looks like they did bare minimum on them, where like Rivian, you have, you know, wood in there. You have some really nice cloth materials. Yes, you have it here. I just feel like they could have done more. The one thing I will say is this material down here is still not like super cheap plastic in that area. It feels like the top. So yeah, I think they did a lot of really nice things, Max. What I do want to compare now is if you're like, okay, this one's too expensive and I prefer like base trim, rear wheel drive, large pack. How does that compare to top trim? I think we're going to see some interesting differences and maybe some things that may surprise you.
Let's look at it.
And here we are with a customer delivered. This is our long-term loan vehicle from Fort Collins Kia. And Max, let's kind of go through this and see what feels different, what feels similar, and really see, is there, what is it, $19,000 difference between essentially the base small battery pack and the GT line we have over there, right?
Yeah. So there is actually for the front row, sorry, for the driver and passenger, passengers, there's not that much of a difference in my opinion functionally. So they're still giving you a standard wireless phone charger, CarPlay, Android Auto, heated and ventilated front seats. You don't get a heated steering wheel. I think you have to go to wind or above for that, but functionally it's mostly the same.
This is really weird sitting in here because it feels like the seats immediately, okay, so the material is different. The actual texturing on it, this feels even harder.
Yeah.
Like you can physically hear it.
This isn't that like nice memory foam here.
Yeah, it is.
It is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this feels exactly the same, just the headrests are black here.
Okay.
They just aesthetically look slightly different because it's white, of course, versus black here.
Right.
Headrests are identical, which I'm glad to see. But honestly, these seats are still incredible. I love how they fit me perfectly, and I'm way overweight, decently tall. They feel completely fine. In all honesty, Max, I don't feel like those seats are 10 times better than these, in all honesty. Like they feel very similar, just immediately getting in and out of them.
Yep.
A few small differences I'm immediately seeing. This area right here, you no longer have the twisty cup holders, and I kind of prefer this actually.
Yeah.
I think, you know, you can throw your phone in this particular area, which I don't have on me. But yeah, this feels literally identical here, like no difference. This material, okay, here's one difference. This is a hard plastic here, and you can look at how that my fingerprints or dry skin, I guess, just left that on there.
That's like my Polestar door cards have that material. It is impossible to clean.
Yeah, that's okay. So I don't love that. What's interesting here is they put this nice kind of brushed metal here, which to me should be in that car, and the cloth should be in here.
Yeah.
I would much prefer this in the other car, so that's really interesting. Max, even on the door cards down there, I'm noticing that grille looks identical, and this one does not have the Meridian sound system, but you still get that metal finish.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like, I forget the speaker count, but like I'm not noticing, like on that one, the GT line, we didn't have an extra speaker grill here. Here you have the same situation.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if the Meridian system is actually that much better, at least just looking superficially at the amount of speakers, and also just pizzazz. Like one of my favorite things, Coleton, in the auto industry is Mazda's Bose system. You know, not like top tier luxury, and yet the like aluminum grills they have for those speakers elevate that car interior so much. Nothing like that in Land or GT-Line EV9, which I don't, you know, for spending all that money, they could have made it feel a bit more special.
Okay, yeah, totally agree with that. Honestly, like weird little things that I'm just noticing. So no longer have gloss dark Nardo gray here. This is a textured plastic. Does this look cheaper? 100% it does, but I think maybe a lot of people would actually prefer this over that.
Yeah.
You also, wow, this is really interesting, Max. This material feels slightly different, but it doesn't feel like cheap enough that I'd be like, oh, that one's way, way nicer. It honestly, aesthetically looks almost exactly the same. This material I know right here is identical, you know, kind of the matte colored buttons here.
Yep.
Okay, that's the big difference is down here. So that's a massive, massive difference.
Wow.
So this part of the door for sure is a lot more plastic feeling, and yeah, don't love that quite as much. But honestly, I'm surprised, Max, getting in or out of the nice one into the not so nice one, you don't immediately feel like you're spending $19,000 less by any means. Yeah, are the seats white and like a little cooler looking? Sure, of course they are, but I gotta say, I'm pretty darn impressed. Is there anything different here on the steering wheel that we're seeing here, Max?
Just no four-wheel drive, obviously, because this is not
Sure.
a dual motor car. I think the layout is mostly the same. Otherwise, stocks and stuff, all the same material. Coleton, is I think your passenger seat is powered too, as is the driver here. But as you can see, there's actually fewer controls. So this doesn't have the fancy like 14-way lumbar adjustment and massage. So that is one thing that the Land and GT-Line do have going for them with that nicer seating option. But if that doesn't matter to you, then this, I think, makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, Coleton, what do you think of the headliner here? Because I remember going to the press event one of the press events for these cars, and they were making a big deal about using recycled material in areas like this.
Yeah, it looks like it, and honestly, I wish they made this in a black version and put it in that car. I think this actually, I don't personally love like beige headliners. It's one of those things, I like having a dark headliner. You one thing for sure feel in this car without having, you know, the sunroof here, you don't get all that light incoming. The headroom though is miles up here. It's fantastic. And I don't even, the seat's not even all the way down, Max. So I'm very impressed by that. But again, like getting in and out of these cars, I just shuffle right out. Where R1S, I do this duck and it's kind of uncomfortable to do after a period of time. I just feel like this car is laid out a little bit better because it feels substantially bigger. But I am very, very surprised how little you give up in the base trim in this. Like the base trim is actually quite a bargain when you consider all that you're getting. Yes, you don't have all-wheel drive in this particular one. You have to bump up another trim, but you do have, 99 kilowatt hour pack in this. Rear-wheel drive, most of the creature comfort.
To be fair, $61,000 to get this 99 kilowatt hour pack, but still not that much money for this much range and space.
Yeah, a lot of car for that. And you don't really lose anything as far as like, it's not a smaller car. You still have the captain's chairs back here, which I think now let's
You don't actually have the captain's chairs because there's a bench row. So let's take a look at the second row because
these are captain's chairs.
Oh my gosh, I got myself mixed
you're
up
confused.
here.
That's what I was like, what's he talking about?
The base light one isn't captain's ones.
Yes.
These are captain style, but I guess they're not like the nice luxury feel. We'll get into there because it feels like they made a few more trade-offs for the rear passengers on the cheaper one.
Okay, fair enough. So Kia has really gone crazy with their wheel designs and very distinctive between all of the trims. So this is their top offering wheel here. So let's see what they're running here, Max. A 285, which is quite a wide tire. 285, 45, 21. Actually quite a thick wheel here going on. Now, here's the weird thing with this wheel. This entire thing is all plastic. It's all a cover. The weird thing though, it doesn't feel like you can remove it. This may be one of those situations like the Nissan Aria, I believe it is, to where they have literally bolted the aero cover in. So once you take the wheel off, you can actually take the aero cover off. But it really, when you're just quickly looking at this, this looks like a gloss black wheel and that you could remove this area. That's not the case. Feels very cheap in my personal opinion for a top trim one. Now let's look over here at the light rear wheel drive. Very different design. You can see kind of that four-spoke nature. Is it the Wind and the Land that have a three-spoke design, Max?
I believe so, yeah. Basically a triangle kind of look. I kind of feel like that's the coolest, most distinctive wheel here. But no shortage of options between the trim levels. And man, oh man, the 19-inch base wheels with the tires they're outfitted with, like you said, they're wide. And here, because of this small wheel size, they are fat with sidewall. I don't think I've ever seen an EV with that much sidewall.
So this is running a 255/60/19, so a lot narrower and a lot taller sidewall. This is likely going to give you the best ride. Now, I believe the all-wheel drive GT line has rear air suspension to dump the rear. Yep, exactly. For if you're towing or if you're just throwing some stuff in there. This one is all springs on the side.
But None of these are like the Rivian R1S
No.
with a super sophisticated air suspension or an EQS. It is a lot more basic.
Yeah, but honestly, the ride in these, one thing we didn't even touch on in the interior is the noise isolation is fantastic in this car. Like I said, much quieter than Model X, much quieter than Rivian R1S, and I would say pretty close to Mercedes EQE, EQS. But these wheels, this is interesting, Max. So these are alloys. Like, these feel like beefy boys here.
Oh yeah.
Now, this plastic cover, I'm sure you could get off, but man, that feels really tight in there. I don't want to break that off. So what you'll do here is basically stick in a pry tool to get to your lug nuts if you're taking the wheel off. Boom, pop that out. Such a funky design, but man, you can see an EV9, they don't necessarily look 100% EV to me, Max, but then you like look at the wheels and you go, ah, that's the electric Kia for sure.
Yeah, I would say headlights and wheels, super distinctive.
Absolutely. Well, detailing and paint nerds, it's now your time. So we're gonna check out, of course, the customer delivered one. Like I said before, this car has not been hand washed by us at the Out of Spec team. This has gone through a few auto washes here and there because it's been, roads here in Colorado have been disgusting to say the least. Now, I did not wash this car, so do keep in mind it's dirty. It was not delivered like this, but we're gonna talk a lot about the paint finish on here. We're gonna talk a little bit about orange peel. We're gonna talk about the scratches that I'm seeing from the dealership where we collected this vehicle. Holy smokes, we need to, I gotta go over there and talk to them and maybe train their guys because this looks rough to say the least. And then we'll finally talk about sanding marks, any sort of rotary polishing or things like that that I notice on the paint here. We'll take some paint readings just to kind of get a general idea of how much paint's on this car and how consistent it is. I understand these are long, but a lot of people do actually care about this stuff. You'd be surprised. So Max here, again, the car is dirty. We've got water spots all over it. First thing I want you to notice, just swirl marks. So I have my scan grip light here, and all I'm looking at is basically all the scratches. So if you look at that light source and I move this around, you can see all of the swirl marks. Let's just walk around this car and look at really, really bad areas. Of course, we've got fingerprints area all over here. Really nice metallic here on the black, but holy smokes, Max. I hope we can show that on camera.
Swirly.
Oh yeah, okay, we definitely can. Every single area here is just swirled beyond belief. Let's look at these A-pillars here. So seeing a little bit of rotary trailing, especially in this particular area, maybe a little hard to show on camera, but some deep scratches in that. All of this black piano black trim around here, super scratched. Holy smokes, look it up here. Those scratches up there would take a tremendous, like right here, that is like almost burning through that edge. And again,
Yikes.
wow, this is just prepped by our local Kia dealership here, Fort Collins Kia. Sorry to tell you guys, but this does not look good. Look at those B pillars there, guys. Yikes. Same thing going on back here. I can actually see a little bit of polishing marks in here and of course, ton of scratches. So I think, you know, this particular dealership, probably washing them, drying them with a dirty chamois that they do on every car. Man, that's gotta be improved there, guys. This is not how you want to be delivered a new vehicle. These scratches in here, this one, that is a huge scratch right there. And again, this car is filthy right now. I haven't hand washed this. I'm gonna be doing a video on how to just quickly protect a vehicle very, very soon, probably today with that. This charge port, Max, come up a little bit. Yeah, you can see some rotary polishing marks in that as well. And I'm also noticing how different colored this bumper and this is. Come back over here. You can see how kind of grayed out, black, kind of grayed out and black that is. So not matching those colors perfectly. And yeah, I understand this car is filthy. It didn't look that bad, honestly, when we had the lights on, and then you turn them off and you're like, holy smokes, this is really bad. So I'm seeing a few little polishing marks. Yeah, definitely some up here. Can see a little sanding mark right there. Not too terribly bad. Holy cow though, the swirls in this one. Okay, so maybe we can forgive Kia a little bit. Maybe it may make sense to look at that one also, just well, not really, because that's a press car, but as a customer delivered one, my personal opinion, this is really, really, really bad on how the paint condition actually is. Max, there is a couple of areas on this one. Yeah, so up here, that has been full polished on that A-pillar there. And then one of the big areas I noticed was this. See that dry spot come up a little bit? There you go. So all of this right here, that's a sanding mark. So you can see how much more clear it is right there. Sanding mark in that particular area. So, condition of this paint, not good. So Kia dealerships out there delivering, you know, if this was a $70,000 Kia EV9, this paint is terrible. Like, honestly, from most used cars I see, I would say this is like 10 out of 10 bad, where most cars I see are like between 4 to 5. Like, you know, Rivians, you'll see a lot more sanding marks on it. So I gotta say, factory wise, I'm not seeing a ton of sanding marks, ton of polishing. I think that's acceptable. This particular, how this car was prepped at the dealership, really not good. So I think next, let's get into some paint readings and just kind of see an average of how much paint we have on this car, how consistent it is. We'll definitely notice some areas like that have been sanded on a little bit, and then we'll finish this one off. Well, here we have the paint meter, and this is really a cheap Amazon paint meter. I really like having this for, you know, if anybody wants to pick one of these up, they go to purchase a used vehicle, you can quickly and easily tell if your car has been repainted in areas. I've saved a lot of my customers thousands upon thousands of dollars in purchasing a car that had a clean Carfax on it, grabbing this exact paint meter, which has been calibrated with all the sheets and everything. It's not 1000% accurate, but it's within the realm where I can kind of get a good idea of how much paint's on here. Now, we measure in mils. For all of you saying, millimeters, you have 4 to 6 millimeters of paint? No, it's mils, completely different. So look that up if you're confused between the two. What I see typically on a wide range of cars is 4 to 6 mils is very, very average. So what I'm looking for here is paint consistency. So I don't want to see like the hood at 8 mils and a fender at 4 mils or somewhere in between there. And even throughout the panel, you don't want to see like this particular area be 7 mils and then this area 3 mils or something similar like that. We've also noticed while doing this upon, you know, customer delivered vehicles, things like Lucid with ultra thin paint, that can be damaging, you know, as you get rock chips or scratches that need to be polished out. You have no paint there to work with. So I'm anxious to see, I've never put a paint meter on this, so we're gonna see this in real time. Now I wanna say one thing. I know the car's dirty here. It actually doesn't look too bad with the lights on, but it's incredible what that scan grip light does to really pick up all of that nastiness, mimics the sun. Max, orange peel here, I gotta say, looks very reasonable. Like, I would say maybe just as good as Rivian, but I'm curious to see how their paint looks. So let's throw this on here. 4.3, 414, 5 mils. 5 mils, I'll put it over here, 4.5. Okay, so that seems so far pretty reasonable. You know, within, you know, half to 3/4 of a mil difference there, I think that's totally reasonable. Let's move to this panel. Let's go here on that sanding mark, 482 and 469. So this looks really good down here. Great. So this pillar here, plastic, not gonna read that. Let's go up here. Almost 5 mils. 5 mils. 5.2 mils. Wow, nice job, Kia. Okay, a little lower there. Okay, so a little bit of a low spot there. Not completely uncommon to what I see. Max, holy smokes, this thing is like very consistent. You always love this section of the video. It's like every time your kind of heart stops when you do a new reading on there. Yeah. So, wow, I gotta say, so far, Kia, nice job.
Lucid to shame.
It honestly does. And even Rivian, like Rivian has this very interesting piece behind basically this, you know, second door here. And this will be like on average 6 to 7 mils. And then the same panel, it's painted in one. This panel will be like 4 to 5 mils. So like huge discrepancies there, but man, Kia, I'm very impressed. Let's keep going here. 562, 559, max will go down here. 435, so a little lower down here. Look at how deep that scratch is right there. Holy smokes.
That's more than level 7.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a big scratch there. Holy, wow, okay. 518, let's go up here. Okay, wow, I'm impressed. This as a detailer though, you can, I don't know if you can forgive like the way this car was delivered. The scratches on this, if this were my car, for example, I'm taking delivery of this car. Honestly, this would be one of those cases. If I'm purchasing an EV9 and I went to go pick up the car and it looked like this, I may deny delivery, in all honesty, because to get this paint back to what I would call reasonable or acceptable, we're taking off so much paint on there. So that's why this is important. If you have something like a Lucid where you have 2 mils of paint and paint in this condition, you don't have the room to sometimes need to wet sand really deep scratches out. You don't really have room to compound and polish. Sometimes you can only do a quick little polish over it before you're really starting to compromise the clear coat there. So I really think it's important if you're purchasing a car, if you actually care about the paint, the condition, and really want your car to look nice, maybe just not have them prep the car. Like, if I were ordering a car from this particular brand or this dealership and they're like, oh, we have to PDI them, I may say, I don't want it washed. And if that may be a deal breaker, because this condition of this car is really, really, really bad. And I've been in the detailing business for 10 plus years now. I've detailed 600-700 vehicles. So I know how new cars come in. This one is one of the worst I've actually ever seen. So let's come over here. Okay, Max, I expected this to all be plastic, to be totally honest. Dude, remarkable paint on this though. Like from the factory, great paint. From the dealership here, yikes. Ooh, that's the highest reading we've got so far. Let me go in this other area next to it. So still a little high there compared to the rest of the car. Just go down the doors and we'll finish this one up. Wow. I want to come down here. 485. So it seems like the lower on the door, just a little bit less paint. I think we had a 435 on the lower area over there. Seems pretty normal, honestly, to what I see. All right, Max, I think I'm ready to give a final verdict. I want to do one thing. So that's of course, black metallic. This one has a lot more metallic in it. Just want to see. Yeah, that's kind of what I expected.
More paint.
Not necessarily more, actually. This has kind of about right around the same. So for example, like my white Tesla over here, this is a pearl white. So if you measure, like I have a midnight silver metallic Tesla, it's right around that 4 to 5 mil range. Everywhere on this car is more in the 7 to 7.5. That doesn't mean you have more clear coat. All that means is they did more color layers. So you have to, kind of extrapolate that out and saying, okay, so typically 4-ish mils or so is the thickness of a sheet of printer paper. And that is your primer. That is your color coat or your base coat, color coat, and then clear coat. You are dealing with such a thin margin of error there. So the big thing with this is like, again, if you have really thin paint from coming in and your car is delivered like that with a ton of scratches and you go to polish that, you're gonna burn through the paint. If you have inconsistencies to where like you have 7 mils and then 3 mils on a particular panel, the paint could be really scary to work on, especially on edges. So that's why we do this. But my overall verdict, the EV9, very, very nice vehicle for the money. I personally think Kia has a lot to do to get butts in seats of these cars for people to actually drive them and understand that this is an extremely compelling, nice vehicle that's very practical for especially small families with kids and dogs, and a really nice utilitarian vehicle. I think where it's priced at, yes, it is a little high, but man, you sure get a lot for your money in this particular situation. I think premium wise, they're nice, especially on the outside. They look extremely nice in GT trim line. The interior, in my personal opinion, I think some of the seat materials could be a little bit nicer. Rivian vegan leather is some of the best that I've worked on in the entire auto industry. I like their stuff better than even Tesla. Tesla seats can be a little finicky to work with, so I'd like to see a vegan leather option in here that's more soft, more plush feeling, and I truly think that would really transform the seat experience in here. But there's so much to love about the EV9. Paint quality wise, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, the orange peel seems pretty good, not a ton of factory sanding marks or dust nibs, things like that. Exterior fit and finish is really, really nice. Honestly, in this particular case, I'd say our customer delivered one was slightly nicer than our press vehicle we had here. But yeah, I think the EV9 is going to be a splash. I really think we need to do some videos comparing these cars side by side with an R1S so you guys can truly see on camera with butts in seats, seeing the size difference. Because if you go drive an R1S after this, you're going to be like, why does this car feel so small? It's really, really intriguing. But hope you guys enjoyed this. I really think Kia knocked it out of the park with this, with some few caveats here and there where I think they could improve and kind of get over that hurdle of you're paying $70,000+ for a Kia. Max, do you have any thoughts before we end off this video?
No, just very impressed with all of the build, really, the paint as you showed. I think it says a lot that not only is Kia producing under the hood fundamentally very advanced EVs, that they're doing it with good build quality. It just shows you how far the Korean automakers have come. And I think it really puts a lot of the rest of the industry to shame, or should put them at least on high notice. This is really impressive. It, I think, continues to give Tesla, Rivian, everyone else a lot to work on, because this is, again, a Kia. And yeah, it's $70,000, but as we've seen, this customer delivered one that's like $60,000 is also really nice, barring the poor experience of PDI at the dealer. So, hopefully the dealerships catch up with where the brand has come. And hopefully the customer perceptions change. I don't know. I know Kia is working hard to kind of change their image. They used to be like, you and I probably remember the hamster ads for the Kia Soul and all that. The brand has come a long way since then. And I've talked to people from Kia. We've seen the vehicles, firsthand. They've come a long way. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how the public reacts to that with vehicles like this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the biggest things of maybe buying decisions is, purchasing a car like this. Yes, we have somewhat kind of partnered with Fort Collins Kia. You still do have the traditional dealership experience with these, where you have to find a car, you do have to kind of negotiate. They're going to try to add on, and I'm not saying this for, our Fort Collins Kia is like this, but Kia dealerships around the country, they're going to try and push, oh, you need to get Zerk Shield on the interior and do PPF and do tint, and we're going to have ADMs on these. Whereas like Tesla Rivian experience is, you order a car on your phone, the car comes in, done.
You can, I think, start to get these, or maybe it's Hyundai that started selling vehicles on Amazon.
Yeah, so yeah. There are some differences there, and definitely, these cars will need service, definitely a lot less than gas vehicles, but EGMP vehicles have had their own small issues where they do have to go in for service. So I do see that could be a negative for a lot of people, anywhere in the country where Tesla is easy, especially here in Colorado, we have phenomenal service here to where they'll come to my shop while I'm working, diagnose, fix my car, whereas I don't have to take it to a dealership and, hey, you need new wiper blades and new tires and cabin filters, and that traditional experience that we've all, come to know and not really love. So I do think that's a little bit of a negative, but I hope to see them improve this over time with EVs. And yeah, I'm really compelled. Honestly, this is on the top of our list as a vehicle I'm wanting to purchase. I really love the EV9, to say the least. So thank you guys so much for watching another out of spec detailing video. If you have any questions or comments, please put those in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Helps us make more content with amazing vehicles like this. We'll see you in the next one soon. Bye-bye.